Nigeria, good people, great nation, almost 167 million of us. Economically, how will you describe your government transition through the Yar'Adua government and the present government of Goodluck Jonathan, in the sense as well, the United Nations has just rated Nigeria as the best destination for inward investment in Africa?
Well, let me just tell you this. It's all very well to say that Nigeria is the best destination for inward investment, but when you look at the facts and the figures, it's really a very, very dim place to come and invest, first of all. And, I'm a proud Nigerian, and I would want people to invest in my country. I'm not, when you talk about the country is one thing, talk about the government is another, and I would welcome any foreign company or foreigners or even indigenous people to invest in our country, because I believe that's the way forward. So it's a wonderful thing, and I thank the United Nations for saying such wonderful things about us, despite the fact that the truth of the matter is that if you look at the facts and the figures and you look at the situation in Nigeria, it's a very unattractive place for any sensible person to come and invest right now. Look, let's look at it. First of all, in the last 2 years, 6,500 people have been slaughtered by Boko Haram. Okay, that's not a very attractive thing for foreign investment. For the last 2 years, over 2 years, the northern part of Nigeria is a place that has been very difficult for anybody to come and invest or do any real business in, because the place is on fire. Julius Berger doesn't operate here anymore in the north, as a consequence of the fact that so many expatriate workers in this part of the country have been picked up and killed either by one Islamist sect or the other. Islamic fundamentalism is on the rise in northern Nigeria. The northeastern part of Nigeria, a number of the states there are now facing a state of emergency. Okay, now how can anybody say things are okay in that climate? Let's look at the economy. And of course, before I go to that, go to the southern part of Nigeria, kidnapping everywhere. The government has lost control of the security situation in this country. South, southeast, and even the southwest. People are being kidnapped morning, day, and night. Prominent people. The less prominent ones we don't often get to hear about. The more prominent ones we get to hear about all the time. And that is unfortunate. That's not exactly good for attracting investment into the country. You look at the economic situation. You spoke about when we were in government. Look, the facts and the figures are very simple and clear. When we came into government, when Obasanjo came into government in 1999, let me go back a bit. Even before then, when Abdul Salam Abubakar became president, head of state of Nigeria in 1998, $6.5 billion was in our foreign reserves. That's what Abacha left. 11 months later, all the money was gone. Only 1.5 billion was left. So General Abdulsalami Abubakar spent approximately $5 billion of our foreign reserves, put nothing in there, in the space of 11 months. Okay? By the time Obasanjo was sworn in 1999, $1.5 billion is what we had in our foreign reserve. That's all. You can go and cross-check these things. Okay? 8 years later, when he left, General Obasanjo had built up our foreign reserves to $67 billion. People say 47. I'll come back to that in a minute. But it was actually $67 billion in the space of 8 years, from 1.5. Okay? Now, how did it go to 47, which is what we write down in the books? He took $20 billion out of the 67, leaving 47 to help to pay off the debt. Let's talk about the debt. Okay? When Obasanjo came into power in 1999, Nigeria was indebted to the tune of approximately $32 billion, okay, to the international monetary institutions, Paris and so on and so forth. Okay, 8 years later, by the time he left office, we had zero debt. We weren't owing them anything. For the first time in the history of sub-Saharan Africa, you had a debt-free nation, something that most Western countries felt African and black people just couldn't do. But we did it in Nigeria. We proved them wrong. The idea that, these people are not capable of fiscal discipline, fiscal responsibility, and are not sensible enough to manage their own resources and their funds, we disproved all that. And our debts were paid off. Some were cancelled, some were paid off. And we did exceptionally well. And everybody was clapping for us. So by 2007, we didn't have a debt. Okay? Now, look at the situation today. Okay? We're now in debt to the tune of $9 billion 5 years down the line. and we're still borrowing. If this government continues to borrow at the present rate, but by the time they leave, we'll be hitting almost 20 billion US dollars, close to what we were in 1999. Okay? And it then means that we're back to a situation where we have sold our children and our children's children to what they call the second slavery, the debt trap. Okay? It's a cycle. You are stuck with the principal sum you can't pay off, you keep paying off the interest, and you're basically, excuse my language, completely castrated before the international community. They've got you where they want you. Then they now start telling you how to run your economy, what to do, what you mustn't do. Yes, remove oil subsidy, deal with your people, make them suffer. All these horrendous IMF, World Bank policies. And I'm a bit left of center, so I'm very wary of all these international monetary agencies and so on and so forth. They begin to control you in this very cruel and difficult globalized world. And we don't want to be there, but we're back there now as a consequence of the reckless spending of this particular government and the Yar'Adua administration before them. Let's talk about what they call the excess crude account. 1999, the excess crude account didn't exist, so there was nothing in it. Obasanjo created it. What was it created for? Anytime we get excess money from the sale of crudes, this money goes into the excess crude account. You save it for a rainy day, and it acts as a buffer. By the time we left office in 2007, from zero we had 24 billion US dollars in the excess crude account in 2007. What happened after that? Umaru Yar'Adua came in. At the time of his death, the excess crude account had been depleted to the point of 1 billion US dollars. He spent 23 billion US dollars from the excess crude account in the space of 2 years. He left 1 billion for Goodluck Jonathan when Goodluck Jonathan came in. When Jonathan came in fairness to him, they've been building it up. They now have about 7 billion US dollars there. But that figure represents 17 billion less than what we had. What we left in 2007. Now, this sort of recklessness when it comes to money, it's fiscal irresponsibility. It is madness. How can anybody in his right mind say that's the way to govern a country like Nigeria? And let me also add this. You must understand that between 2010 and today, indeed between 2007 and today, 5 years, the amount of money that has come in to the coffers of the federal from oil and gas sales alone, where is all the money? Where is it? Today, like I said, we have approximately 47, we have approximately, I think I'm right in saying it's 40, in terms of our foreign reserves, I think I'm right in saying it's about 40 billion, I'm not sure, I think it's about 40 billion or something like that, okay? Like I said, if you're looking at it, you look back, all the monies that have come in the last 5 years, how come we have less in our foreign reserves today than we did in 2007 when we left office? Where has all the money gone? Where has all the money from the excess crude account gone? Where has all the money that they borrowed? What is it being used for? Why are we back in debt? These are the issues. And that brings us to the question that Obi Ezekwesili asked. And the question was this. That the 67 billion US dollars that we left behind, that is, you marry the money in our foreign reserves that we left, plus the excess crude, you marry the two figures, you have approximately 67 billion US dollars. What have they done with it? It wasn't only Obi that asked. She was the Minister of Education under government. It wasn't just her that asked. David Cameron also asked the Nigerian government that by June, that the Nigerian government should tell the world and the G8 precisely what they have done with all the monies that they have received from oil sales over the last 2-3 years. The federal government still hasn't answered that question. That is not very good for international investment. Okay? Let me also go to the issue of power generation. Okay? People talk about the fact that things have improved. Look, in 2007 when we left office, we were generating power at 4,500 megawatts per day we were generating in 2007. Okay? We are now in 2013. Okay? 5 years later, we are generating approximately 3,000 megawatts now, maybe a little bit over. The government was clapping for itself about 6 months to a year ago when it hit 4,200 megawatts. What type of progress is this? We have gone backwards. It's retrogressive. We haven't made any progress in terms of the economy, in terms of security, in terms of anything. Now, let's look at other economic indices. They say things are looking good. Let me tell you something. Today in this country, we have 80% graduate unemployment. That is to say, out of every 100 graduates in this country today, 80 don't have a job. Out of every 1,000, 800 don't have a job. And we are churning out graduates every day. They don't have jobs. They're sitting at home.
Is that not the reason why the government introduced you-win in order to recruit people who are...
They can introduce all the programs that they want in the world. The fact of the matter is that when we were in government in up until 2007, between 19 and 2007, graduate unemployment went right down, simply because we were attracting investments in this country. The private sector was booming, the middle class was growing, the banks were consolidated, they were strong, they were moving forward. Everything was, the stock market was booming, everybody was prospering. You know, people were buying cars at record rates. It was a completely different country at the time. Today there are no opportunities, there are no jobs, there is nothing these people have to look forward to, and that's the brutal truth. Except maybe, you know, they vent their frustrations on the social networks and so on and so forth, and they speak their minds out, and that's a positive thing. Thank God for Facebook, Twitter and things like that. And as a leader, I interact with people there, and they're very angry. They don't like anybody that was or is a leader. Even those of us that try to interact with them, they don't like us, and you can't blame them, because they look at their own situation. The other day somebody wanted a job at the CBN. One job, 3,000 applicants for that one job. 80% graduate unemployment. That's a world record. That is a world record. Again, you look at the issue of those living below the poverty line. We're at 70%, according to the United Nations, of Nigerians living below the poverty line. Again, you look at the issue of those that the UN have described, as UNDP has described as being hungry in Nigeria. Again, 70% of the Nigerian people are hungry. These are very frightening statistics. There was one that came out recently, I think just yesterday. The UN said, or the UNESCO, was it UNESCO or... Yeah, well there are two. The first one is the United Nations said that, UNDP I believe, said that, I'm sorry, it's the health agency, you know, about AIDS. They said that, UN Health Agency, they said that Nigeria has more children that are infected with HIV than any other country in the world. What type of world record is this? Is that not frightful? That our youth, our children, are being infected with HIV, so we are sick? We are suffering? Our graduates can't get jobs? People are suffering? People don't have anything to look forward to? We are preparing the ground for a terrible revolution in this country if we're not careful. Another statistic, one of the UN agencies came out with some figures 2 days ago that those that cannot go to, there aren't enough classrooms in Nigeria, and that 10.5 million Nigerian children do not have access to classrooms. It's another world record. The country that came second was Pakistan with 5.5. Third was India with 1.6. Fourth was Philippines with 1.5, and there was one country with 1.3 or something. But Nigeria had 10.5 million of our children under this government are sitting below trees, are sitting in the fields, you know, taking lessons. They can't build classrooms. Where is all the money? What have they done with the money? Look at what they've done in terms of going back to security. Our pipelines and things are being policed, and security is being provided by people that are, you know, were former Niger Delta militants who rightly, I must be frank with you, really belong in jail because they've slaughtered Nigerians in the past. They have killed people in the past. And you have handed over the security for our pipelines to such people. When you speak to me, I speak from the heart, and I don't fear, because I'm a believer in God. I fear no man, only God. These things have to be spoken. And I leave, in terms of security, I leave that to God. So I will always speak my mind. It's not recklessness, it's not stupidity. I know exactly the implications of what I'm saying. But because I'm a believer, I don't fear. How do you put, it's like the British government putting the House of Commons, or putting all the airports in the United Kingdom under the watch of the Irish Republican Army after peace had been, you know, after the peace accord had been signed. That's what they've done here. You don't do that. But Goodluck Jonathan has done that because it suits his purpose. Because he feels that at the end of the day, when he loses the election in 2015, and he will lose by God's grace, he will have his own army to fall back on in the agenda to break up our beloved country, Nigeria. So when you talk about, when anybody tells you that things are looking good, they can save that for their midterm dinner parties, where they clap for themselves, like they did in Stalinist Russia. Like they did in Russia under the Tsar the night before the revolution came, and they were all swept away. They can clap for themselves in the same way as they did, before Cromwell came and flushed out the whole, British royal family and killed the king. They can clap for themselves. These things happen all the time, where governments that have lost touch with reality, that are deluded, start believing their own propaganda. Same with Hitler. Clap for himself. They clap for themselves right up until the time the Russians hit East Berlin and took him, and he had to kill himself. They can clap for themselves. I don't wish anybody dead. I'm not calling for revolution. But what I'm saying is that they are clapping for themselves, but they don't realize they're clapping for their end. Their end is coming soon because God has rejected them. The Nigerian people deserve better.